let me just, first of all, just go back a bit and explain to you how the ITP started. Well, I have been concerned for some time about training in the television industry, and because of this, I wrote 3 articles about training, which were published in TV Bay magazine, which of course have now become our media partners. Now, a good friend of mine, Tim Hall, who is exec producer, read the articles and contacted me. "Graham," he said, "you're absolutely right. Something should be done about the standard of programs within the industry. And there is a huge swathe of people, of skilled people like ourselves, retiring in the next 10 years. Some even sooner than that, some of us actually even older than 65, sooner than that, with skills and knowledge and experience that will not have been passed on to the younger generation. So what will happen then? Think of the skills required, for example, the Fisher Boom operation. Who still knows how to teach that skill?" So we had a meeting, and the ITP was formed with senior people from the broadcasting industry. So this is all Tim's fault that we're here today. But a big thank to you, Tim, wherever you are hiding in the room. Now, when I was doing the research for my articles, I found quite a few large production companies and asked them what they were doing about training. Of the companies I found, none had a training budget, none had a training person, and none had any training at all, did any training at all. So how did they think they were going to find trained people in the future? I had actually no idea what their plans were about finding these trained personnel. Also, one production company, for example, told me that they were having real problems in finding experienced comedy directors. Another, that they were having difficulty finding people trained on the latest EVS software. So there is a growing skills shortage in the industry. But without industry and educators training with each other about the skills needed and broadcast investing more in education, it seems to us that this skills shortage can only get worse. We thought the first thing to do was to bring the trainers and the employers together for a conference to discover what can be done to improve the training and quality of the programs we see daily on our screens. Because without proper training, there is no way the quality of the pictures and sound we see and hear on our screen can ever be improved. How can we work together to better prepare the next generation of program makers by equipping them with the skills and knowledge the industry needs now and, of course, in the future? We hope that today will be the first positive steps to encourage greater communication and collaboration between industry and educators to ensure the correct skills are on the curriculum for the students. But what knowledge of technical fundamentals do the industry need students to have? For example, let me give you some examples. 2 months ago, I did a large lighting job for BBC World. I had 2 third-year students with me on work experience, and I asked the same question as I asked many students from many different universities and college. It's what I call the 13 amp question. I asked them, so I've asked many students the same question. I asked them, what current can you draw from a domestic plug? Now, you think that's a simple question, but none of the students I asked, they do not know the answer. But is this important, I've wondered? Is it important, or am I old-fashioned, because I'm after over 60 now? But how did this happen? How do students do not know this, third-year students? I then asked them about amps. I had the distinct impression that they had no idea what an amp is. I'm sure Andre Ampere, died 1836, is rolling in his grave. I then asked them about wiring up domestic plug, because I've done this lots of time, maybe you have as well on occasion, you need to wire up a 13 amp plug. The answer was so scary that I tell them never ever wire up a domestic plug because you're going to kill somebody. Now I recently did a lens lecture and I asked the students, if you have a 140mm lens and you put in the ×2, what does the focal length of that lens become? 8 or so students look at me blankly. They are unable to do 14 by 2. Now, how has this happened? I asked the students about decibels. They had some idea about decibels, possibly, but when I asked them about logarithms, they seemed to think logs to do with wood piles. You know, but is this important? How did this happen? Am I old-fashioned? I mean, I learnt logs. Should they learn logs? Because after all, Sony talk about their S-log gamma. Panasonic talk about their C-log gamma, as do Arri and other camera manufacturers. But the students had no idea of logarithms, even though, as I'm sure you all know, we do see and hear in a logarithmic fashion. I very much hope that our first session this morning, Skills the Employer Need, will start to answer this question. Recently I spoke to Peter Love, the CEO of Arena Television, who couldn't be here today because he had to go to India to sort out some cricket OB. But he said to me that he'd like their young vision engineers to know about hydraulics. Now, how many broadcast engineering courses teach hydraulics? Also, he said, he would like all his young staff to learn about client care, handling awkward clients, probably staff people, people from Sky. How many courses teach these skills of client care, awkward situations? As a professional, it can be difficult to keep up to date with these developments in technology. If, for example, Reed will bring out a new piece of comms equipment, will a freelance sound guarantee engineer be able to train on this new piece of equipment? Usually no. They'll have to go in their own unpaid time, and then who benefits from their knowledge? The production companies, broadcasters. These people are not investing in training. They are getting their training for free. But is this the best practice? Television is a technologically driven medium. However, it is also about art, which in these days of exciting new kit often seems to have been forgotten. It seems now that everything is digital, and it's much more important than pictures. You can go to large techno shows twice a year, one in Holland, and if you've got a large expense account, you can go to one in America. Maybe your company will pay for you, have a lovely time. But there you can learn about things like adaptive bitrate streaming, or you learn about the latest compression system, AVC H.265, or 246 rather, should I say, or whatever it happens to be. But it's only about technology, about recording, distributing, and viewing images. It's nothing actually about art. I'm not saying that technology isn't important. Well, of course it is. But I feel at the moment it's all people can talk about, 4K, whatever, 8K, like the new Bolex D16 camera. Isn't that an interesting development? Maybe the days of S35 chip cameras are on the wane. Television is art. We produce 25 pictures per second, or 24, or 23.98, or 29.97, depending on your frame rate. But with all the technology going on, this seems to have been forgotten. Each frame is a picture. Each audio cue a soundscape. Everything should count. Now recently, I was talking to some young camera people who had just finished a TV production course, and I asked them about art. Who are their favourite artists, I asked them. Who is their favourite photographer? Now I might as well have asked them about nuclear physics. Art? What does art have to do with them, was the impression I got. Art seemed to be so far removed from their current experience about television, they might have been talking about astrophysics or nuclear physics. After all, they only wanted to be cameramen. Now, when I was cameraman at the BBC, on my camera crew, we had a saying, which was, make every shot a Rembrandt. Make every shot a Rembrandt. Thanks, John Vincent. Now, Rembrandt trained for 3 years with Jacob van Swanberg, and then for another 6 months with Peter Lastman. But how many people entering the TV industry have spent any time studying art? Is it important? We're looking forward to hearing more about your views on this in our third session after lunch. Now, there are some numerous examples of bad practice on mainstream television every day, which only demonstrates how important art is, and that the industry we're in mustn't get complacent, or some might say it doesn't remain complacent, about the importance of training craft skills. For example, look at this incredibly bad eyeliner on BBC Breakfast Show. You would think, wouldn't you, with such an important guest as the Prime Minister, they would manage to get a decent shot of him and a decent eyeline. But who made this possible? Who thought that this framing of the Prime Minister was acceptable? Who agreed to this? How did this happen? On the BBC's One Show, who thought it was acceptable to cut between a mid-shot and a BCU? Who agreed to this? How did this happen? How come they thought it was acceptable to cut between two mismatched cameras on the Andrew Marr show? I mean, these cameras are really not matched. So who went along with this? Who didn't complain? Who didn't change it? How did this happen? What sort of standards are we having? Now, I could go on all day showing you examples of bad programme standards. The BBC have a training budget of £25 million a year. Have we just seen some examples of their training, I ask? Sky's operating profit last year was £1.33 billion. £1.33 billion. Now, how much did they spend on training? You can talk to the people responsible at the BBC and Sky P at 11:45 this morning. Vilmos Zsigmond, ASC, the Oscar-winning cinematographer, said, "It took me a very long time to learn composition, but now, after 50 years, the whole thing has come together." 50 years, it said, it took him to learn art. How many years do those entering the TV world study art, a medium producing pictures? I often think probably almost none. Students often seem to feel more pressurised to complete, let's say, a 5,000-word essay on the effects of EastEnders on society. But will this make them more employable in TV when they graduate? Does the accreditation system help to keep up with the latest industry developments and what employers actually need? For example, a long time after 1-inch VT machines have finished being used, those of you who are my sort of age remember 1-inch VT machines, I went to teach at an accredited university where they were still teaching their students about 1-inch VT machines. And I couldn't help wondering why they were doing this, because at that time the whole industry had moved on to beta tapes, beta carts, etc. So do the employers recognise accreditations? Are they worth anything? If students are leaving not knowing their 2 times table, well, possibly not. We'll talk about this later on this afternoon. Now, this conference has been put together by members of the ITTP, and we have all been totally unpaid. All our time is free, and much of the cost of planning this conference and putting it together has been from our own pockets, because we believe in what we are doing. We wanted to give something back to the industry. So what we're looking for is a sponsor. This is a bit of a plug, a sponsor, to help the ITTP continue its activities. The activities which you in education and industry tell us will add most value to what you all do. Now, wouldn't it be wonderful if all TV production courses got involved with the local drama college, local makeup college, the art college, and they all worked together? If TV production students went to art student lectures, if they went to drama student lectures, if they got involved with makeup, just think of the synergy there could be between all these courses. So by all working together, talking together, communicating together, we can improve the quality of our students, so we can then maintain the quality, value, and more importantly, the profitability of the British broadcasting industry. By working together, we can make this happen. Thank you very much. So after me rambling on a little bit, now I want to invite Ros Morris, who's going to the stage, who's now going to moderate the whole conference for the day for us. And so for me, thank you very much, and have a great day, a great profitable day, and a day where you feel motivated and to go away to do wonderful things. So, Ros.
Well, thank you very much, Graham, and I'm delighted to be here today to moderate this conference on television craft skills. Just to let you know that my experience is as a reporter, TV reporter and presenter, and also radio, and it goes back to actually doing TV news on film with a massive 12-person crew at Thames News, which is not an experience I would wish on anybody. Those were the days. It was completely different. It's so much easier to do news nowadays. But my experience ranges from working for the BBC and ITV and ITN as a reporter and presenter, and I now run my own media training company where I train people how to present themselves on TV and how to prepare and deliver effective interviews. I have a huge range of clients, including a number of universities and public bodies and big companies. Now, our first session is on the skills employers need, and I'd like to invite our panel to come and join me now. Now, we've had a very interesting and extensive opening speech from Graham, and I wanted to start off by asking Chris Owen, Head of Cameras at ITV, whether he chimes in with any of those problems that Graham has mentioned.
Yes, I think so. It's demonstrated in different ways. Quite unusual for the speakers here today, probably. We don't look to recruit from any one source at ITV in any one location. I'm head of cameras and based at the South Bank. We do look for first entry experience 95% of the time. I'll recruit on a contract basis for peaks of work, but otherwise we only ever bring in at entry level. And those entry-level candidates will either be doing the job at another employer or have completed a broadcast-based course, or we would know them already. ITV run extensive work experience programs, the majority based in London, but they also have a network-wide policy called ITV Insight, and that shows candidates the job right the way through the network, sometimes up to 12 months. So our general entry route for people are people that do know the job relatively well.
Do you ever employ graduates?
Yes.
So
yes.
Do you find that any of those, that they do deliver what you need?
Not completely. Not totally surprising in a way. Every centre will have quite unique equipment. As regards sort of candidates that have declared an interest in multi-camera studios, I would want them to know the absolute core basics, the grammar of shooting, how you can help an editor, how your contribution to a production, be it single camera or multi-camera, can enhance the production. But after that, we almost start from scratch.
But of course, at ITV is obviously not just news and current affairs. There's a lot of LE.
Yeah.
And Graham mentioned people not being able to find people who can shoot comedy, people who don't know the right sort of lighting for different genres.
Of course.
So you have to teach people that.
Yes, but going back to what I said earlier on, we don't take experienced people. So we have, I have a department of just over 50, quite unique, I think, in broadcasting today. The senior assistant I've just promoted to an operator has been with us for 6 years. So he's done that sort of training. Yes, I've got big resources. I don't include them in the schedule until they're absolutely ready. And I know a lot of companies won't be able to do that. Our training is not fast, but it's deep and extensive, and I think puts the youngsters in very good shape for the future.
Okay, so we've heard from Chris, who's head of cameras at ITV. Now, Doug Fletcher, you're Director of Operations at CTV Outside Broadcast, so you're supplying people and equipment. Do you find that you have to search for experienced people? I mean, or can you use graduates?
We do use graduates. What we tend to do is we would, once again, get people in during the holiday periods and stuff like that to try and give them a bit more experience. I think what we find is when students do come to us, their lack of the understanding of the bigger picture of what we actually do in terms of an outside broadcast company, they might be used to doing single camera jobs or something like that. It's a totally different thing altogether when we're now doing maybe a 30 camera outside broadcast, whether it's in this country or abroad, and I think that's quite an eye-opener for a lot of the students as to the whole different ways that they go about things.
And Mike Herbert, you're Director of Tech2 Crewing Service. Yeah. So you've got a similar view, supplying people and equipment.
I come to it really from a completely different aspect. It's all the people that work for our diary service have normally worked within the industry, and we only take on people that have got sufficient experience that other OB companies like CTV or Visions would use. If we take, it would be nice to take trainees on, but it just wouldn't work because the OB companies won't take trainees in that position because they always want a person of experience. We supply guarantee engineers to look after OB trucks and flyaway kit, and they have to be people who are experienced within the industry already.
And how much do you think it matters? I mean, I did mention the 12-person crew thing, which was a huge shock to my system. I finally got a job in TV, having been a radio reporter on my own with my equipment, and then I had this 12-person crew. But that was because there were two of everybody then on film. There'd be a cameraman, assistant cameraman, soundman, assistant soundman, lighting, assistant lighting. There'd be a director, a producer, a PA, and 3 drivers, and all in different unions. It was another world. But anyway, the point was, though, that, of course, as assistant, you learnt the job. And, of course, there's no scope for that now. So that's a big change. So we have gone from having been rather overstaffed to rather understaffed. Would you say that?
Yeah, I mean, the people we take have generally worked for an OB company for an amount of years, and for whatever reason they've decided to leave. So they tend not to need an assistant as such, but what they need is ongoing training, and that becomes an issue because they leave the companies with training of the equipment up until that point in time. Then they leave, but 2 years down the line, they still need more experience because the equipment's changed, their requirements have changed. But that's quite hard for freelance people to gain additional training.
So, Peter Leverick, you've decided to do something about this perceived problem, and you're setting up your own academy.
Yes, I've set up New Leaf Academy, which is basically a new entry training facility. We're basing it at Wimbledon Studios, which is the old home of the Bill, where they've got a number of sets. But I have to say at this stage, it's very much aligned to what we now call the film industry, which is filming, drama, that sort of thing. It doesn't embrace television studios and multi-camera type skills at this stage, simply because that requires a considerable amount of expensive equipment.
But what made you decide to set up an academy?
Well, I think Graham really explained it very eloquently, and that is that as a viewer watching output now, it's very, very frustrating, and there are so many programs now that are in the category of pretty much unwatchable because of the way that they are shot without any real art consideration, that the people making the programs, and the whole gamut of them, right from the bottom end, the operational staff, right through to script writing and directing, producing, don't understand how to communicate with pictures and sound.
And where do you
And
think that lack of training is? I mean, is it in the courses at universities?
Yes,
or?
I believe it is, because with my experience of teaching students that come out of universities and are trying to get into broadcast is that they don't have this basic understanding. It's the bigger picture, as you just said. And in fairness, the universities and the colleges cannot really teach all of that, as well as all the technical background and everything. It's something that in my day, I joined the BBC in the 60s, where it was effectively an apprenticeship which spanned 2 years' experience, which is rather like you're giving your staff crews now. But there aren't many broadcasters out there that are taking on full-time staff. They rely very heavily on freelancers. And of course, they won't want the freelancers unless they're fully trained with all this background experience. So it's a real dilemma. And on top of that, there's this problem now of the operators now are much more multi-skilled. And across all of that as well, you know, that there are people now that are required to write, research, shoot and edit, and possibly perform, especially in news and current affairs.
Well, especially in documentaries, where
Absolutely.
it can be like a one person.
One-man crew, let alone,
Yes, doing the whole documentary.
One-man production team, not just a one-man
Yes.
crew. And see, that's very, very difficult to teach all of that in 3 years. So what we've decided to do, particularly with the film side of things, we hope to move this into television, is to create an accredited one-year course, whereby at the end of that, the students coming out of it will be employable. Now, that doesn't mean that they will have all the skills on the specialist bits of equipment that you may have as employers, but they will at least have a very thorough understanding of what it's all about, the bigger picture, what we're trying to achieve in communicating information and entertain the general public.
So you would actually be critical of the university current courses as not quite providing
As a general
enough.
statement, yes. Obviously, there are exceptions, and one of the things we're going to be relying on heavily at our academy is to be able to tap into the resources of the broadcasters and the very few universities that do have broadcast equipment, because we can't afford to do that right now. So we're going to need facilities to train them with.
Well, of course, we're going to hear from Skillset in the
Yes.
next session, and they've got 17 centres that they certify as
Sure.
important centres,
Yes.
which are fully equipped.
Yes.
So you want to use those as
Yes.
well. Chris, coming back to you, would you say that there is a need for universities to change the concept of the way they train people for the TV industry?
Yes. Well, all the problems that Peter's highlighted. I mean, we have our closest relationships probably with Bournemouth, Ravensbourne, Westminster, Winchester, probably. I mean, we do write to probably 30 or 40 universities and colleges running media-based courses. And I do sort of say right up front, we're looking at students who have already identified the multi-camera studio route. But even within those applicants that we get from students looking for not only permanent positions, but we run a summer work experience program, and we give up to about 12 6-week placements for students currently in education. So this isn't for people either doing a job already or just sort of coming and wanting to have a look how TV works. These are people in the middle of a course, and they'll do 2 weeks with cameras, sound and lighting. So we often, 1 year on, know them. But what does frustrate us...
How many people do you get applying for that? What's the ratio?
200 or 300 probably.
For how many places?
Up to, we sort of judge it on the busyness of the studios and also the sort of calibre of the candidates. 12 is average, something
So it's very
like that.
competitive.
Yes, very. We interview over 3 or 4 days for that. But the frustration that I often have at that point is that if students have identified the multi-camera studio path, they still have never been in the studio. And that is very frustrating for us. We, even if it's only to sit in the studio audience, see the kit, see what jobs are around, we can have 3,000 audience members go through a week at the London studios. And that's very, very easy to get in. So that I would criticise the universities for, that if that desired pathway is identified early enough, they should be extending their knowledge so that to prospective employers, you know, they can demonstrate they do want to do that route into their eventual career.
So, Doug, what specific skills would you like for your people that you interview to have? Or do you think they're not taught?
Yeah, because an outside broadcast, you know, is slightly different from studios, and you know, there are specific needs that we need on site.
For outside broadcast?
For outside broadcast, yeah. So when we have students that come in and they're quite surprised, or they seem to get taught effectively cameras, a bit about cameras and a bit about audio. But there's nothing about the vision department, VT department, and things like that. So that's, you know, where we see that there's a bit of a downfall. Michael probably, with his background in VT, would be able to tell us a bit more. You know, tapeless solution is, you know, is the way things are moving on site. There doesn't seem to be any sort of teachings regarding that side of things as well. So it's whether it's, you know, specified vision or VT or sound or whatever the case may be. I think they get a very general look at things, but from our point of view, we need people that are a bit more focused, and we try to, once they come to us, we put them on a 3-year training program within the company, and that way they can sort of hone their skills a bit better.
And do you get a lot of applicants?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, I got, last week, we just got the go-ahead from our sort of head office. We're going to be having 9 students this year moving forward on a full-time basis. But in terms of application forms for that, as you say, it could be 100, 120 people apply for those positions.
And Mike, from your point of view, do you think that the universities need to change the way they do things? I mean, some people have said, why not do a 2-year course and make it more like the old HND courses, more technical?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't really deal with people direct from universities, because all the people that work for our agency have been in the industry a long time. Mainly their main problem is the ongoing move towards further training. But from where I've worked in the industry, a lot of the new people coming in don't seem to have, and as Graham said, it's not only the technical skills, they don't have any empathy with production people. You have to learn to be able to deal with, certainly in the EVS environment, you're dealing with production people all the time. It's not just a push a button, record something and go back and play it in. You have to be able to deal with the production, the producers, the directors.
It's teamwork, isn't it?
It's teamwork, and that is never shown. I was party to, I work a lot with the Sky outside broadcast, and they bring in some training within the truck. They bring in trainees, but they don't show them how to deal with the production people. So I think that's still an important point. And I'm sure that would be difficult for universities to teach production or in training.
Yes. Just take it that one further. A cameraman, single cameraman, PSC cameraman, you know, considered a bit the bottom end of the pile, if you like, minimal art. But they are required to actually work with artists, performers in front of the camera, albeit a news reporter. But they still need to be aware of how to deal with them. Like a good cameraman, a good PSC cameraman on a news crew should actually be able to have a quick look in the viewfinder and just check that their hair's in place and they haven't got dandruff on their shoulder, all that stuff, you know, and deal with it in a diplomatic way. But these, of course, these skills are never taught at that level. This is stuff that can only be picked up through full-time employment or experience.
Framing of shots.
Well, that as well, yes. I mean, the art comes in there as well. You see so many shots badly framed now, which is one of the basic requirements of camera operation, is to minimise the distractions for the viewer, so the viewer can concentrate on the information that's being imparted by the performer. Now, if you've got, you know, the classic, you know, tree growing out the back of the head, or not enough looking room, or too much headroom, these are all distractions that the cameraman's got to be able to deal with.
Well, I know as a reporter that you rely on the camera
Absolutely,
operator, that
yes,
they are going
yes.
to, you know,
Yes.
you're not
Well,
going to look completely
that's
stupid.
the
and-
teamwork bit.
That's
But
the job.
framing's only taught from a textbook, that you divide your frame up into the thirds and put your eyes on the top one and on the left-hand one if they're looking to the right, you know, and it's framed properly. No, because there's so many other things. I mean, Graham came out with one really good saying. I'll come out with another one at the BBC training, and that is, your assessment of a shot is, if it feels right, then it is right. It used to be, if it looks right, it is right. But the real thing is, with art, is that the shot, you've got to feel the shot. And it's dynamic. It's not a single frame photograph. The subject is moving.
Well, Graham talked about the every shot a Rembrandt
Yes.
quote, which is a brilliant
Yes,
quote. And I
yes.
think just ordinary viewers can appreciate that when we, if you just freeze frame any kind of American series, whether it's Blue Bloods, NCIS, Homeland, yes, I watch them all. But you freeze frame any of those, go out the room, come back. And sometimes I've come back and I've gone, wow. You know, that is just an arbitrary freeze frame, and it's a brilliant shot.
Absolutely
and it's
right.
lit properly, and of course that's drama, and that's different. But those elements you're saying have got to be in everyday TV.
But because it's a moving picture, it's a continuous process, that you're watching the picture and you're continually assessing it. Does this feel right? Does this feel right? Is it what the viewer requires?
Now, I wanted at this point to bring in a few statistics, which were published by DCMS in a couple of weeks ago, in January this year. Official statistics published today reveal the UK's creative industries are now worth £71.4 billion per year to the UK economy. They had growth of almost 10% in 2012, outperforming all other sectors of UK industry. So we must be doing something right. And their official statistics, which cover film, television, and music and publishing, account for 1.68 million jobs in 2012, which is just over 5.5% of all UK jobs. So this is a really significant industry, very significant both in Britain and also externally for exports. So can I ask you, each of you, what do you think should be done next? I mean, what's the one thing you'd like to see changed, Doug? Or two things, if you like.
Yeah, no, I think it's going back to trying to give the people more of an education as what the end requirement will be. As I say, we do, at the moment we've got trucks in Russia, Switzerland, Austria and the Middle East, and it's trying to manage people's expectations. A lot of the time when students come to us, they've done their 2 years or 3 years, whatever the case may be, and then they expect, all right, that's me, a broadcast engineer. Well, no, that's, from our point of view, that's the start of your training. That's you've shown, So I don't know whether I think Graham mentioned earlier on things like, power requirements, things like that. It's basic stuff for an outside broadcast that we do, every single day. But that's something that is, it's not taught. Power, hydraulics, air conditioning. These are the things that we have issues with on site, and as an outside broadcast company, we don't expect them to be, an air conditioning engineer, but even just, the very basics of it, and specifically power. That's a big thing. We're dealing with, stuff that could kill people, and that's, we have to make sure that everybody knows exactly what's happening with that.
So do you think that the 3-year BA course is the right way forward? Because a BA course, as Graham hinted, has to include dissertations and all sorts of stuff which people may never use again. Is that actually the right way to do this for this industry?
It possibly is. However, whether students look at it or after 2 years they look at it and start to then specialise is perhaps a better way of going about things, rather than effectively doing your 3 years and then coming out and then going, what do I want to do from there?
Right.
If you can specialise in whether it's cameras, audio, or whatever department, if you can focus more on that and then get more on-site training, I think.
So do you feel that at the moment the degrees that people do, the knowledge they have is actually degree level? Because you all seem to be saying that it isn't really what you would expect, to some extent.
To some extent, yes. However, it's to the degree level but maybe not so much in the outside broadcast, which, you know, as I say, I keep going on about, it's because that's what we specialise in. So if somebody wants to go into outside broadcast, I think they need to try and focus more on outside broadcast. If they're looking to go into a studio, then that's obviously, you know, a different course again.
What about you, Chris? What would you like, sort of steps would you like to see taken?
It probably is steps. 3 years for me is too long. It's a notoriously difficult job to interview for. You have to physically do it to really demonstrate. For instance, when we interview for assistants, the interview is in 2 parts. Yes, a verbal one to say what you've done, and we'll go through a few sort of pictorial exercises and whatever. But an equally important part, and a similar vote when we decide who we're going to take on, will sort of endorse what Peter's saying, and a camera assistant takes candidates around the building and shows them kit, either wrongly set up or badly set up. It's how much they want to touch it and just look at it and chat about it and ask that assistant, what do you do? You know, does the job take your life over, as everybody tells us? And we know it does. So it's teamwork. It is identifying what you want to do. And for the universities, I think, to give those people that do know what they want to do early every available opportunity, even if it pulls away slightly from some of the academic side, get out and have a go and see the job being done. As I'll say again, touch the kit, see what you can do with it, just sort of have a play, see the job being done, so that you come to it sort of from a real position of knowledge.
Thank you, Chris. And what about you, Mike? Something that you would like, you think could be changed?
Well, coming to it from the freelance point of view, I had a conversation with a unit manager at one of the OB companies, and he said on any one day they're employing more freelancers than they are staff. But freelancers are not included as part of the companies moving forward, so they need to encompass the fact that freelancers, they need to be kept up to date with what's going on. You can't just exclude freelance people and expect them to come into the industry and go, that's fine, I know how to work that piece of kit, because they don't, because they may never have seen it. And you can't learn a piece of new kit on a single day when you're meant to make it work in the evening. You just have to get the thing to work. It doesn't mean you learn how to use it properly.
Yes, okay. And Peter?
Well, yes, I think you touched on a very good point there, is that how do we train freelancers who don't have access to the hands-on moments? 3 years is too long. The whole university concept, I think, is flawed, mainly because the students, the applying students, want to come away with a piece of paper that says, I've got a degree. That seems to be the thinking of the students. The way I think it should work and could work better is that if they had a 1-year foundation course whereby they come away as qualified in terms of theory and a bit of hands-on and what have you, but they must at that point have a very good idea which discipline they want to go into, whether they're studios, whether they're OBs, are they going to be engineers, going to be cameras, going to be sound, whatever. And then from that point onwards, I think it's quite easy with the employed staff is to then send them off, if you haven't got in-house training facilities, send them off to colleges to do modules that are specific to their aims.
What, while they're working?
While they're working is what we would call in the old days day release.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I can endorse what
sure.
Peter's just said, when you questioned how do we train freelancers, well, tomorrow we're training 6 freelance sound supervisors who've been in the business a very long time on the new Apollo sound desk, but it's expensive.
Yes.
And so companies, broadcasters, they've all got to acknowledge training costs money.
It does.
And it's the only way this industry will survive in its present form to its current standards, but it's not cheap.
Well, of course, the same thing applies to journalism and in broadcasting, in that you have to train the freelancers if you change the software. Yes. And certain people have software that no one else can use.
And who pays for that?
Exactly, but the companies have to to give people that training. So the same thing applies, doesn't it? I'd like to throw it open now to some questions for the panel. Perhaps the people with the mics could, it's difficult for me to see with the light, so perhaps there's a lady there. near the front.
Oh, hi.
And perhaps if you could
I'll stand
say
up, yeah.
who you are and where you're from.
Ruth Callum from the University of Gloucestershire, and I can't decide if I'm furious with you all or agree with you all. I worked in the industry a long time, set up a TV production course 7 years ago. It's skill set accredited. I think we get hardly anything for that, by the way, for whoever's going to speak about skill set. It takes a lot of, we've been re-accredited. We are not a theory course. We do not do essays about EastEnders. We are as practice-based as we can be. We have a great graduate employment rate. But I don't like to be out of a job, because when you talk about taking 9 trainees or 12 trainees, that's a drop in the ocean. My husband was an assistant film editor, you know, has been all through like you and through to, and now edits on Avid again. You know, as a producer-director, we had, my colleague was a trainee PA to begin with. We had training, which nobody gets now, and then your freelance is absolutely right, there's no training. So I'm saying, actually, the answer lies much more in the industry than it does that we can do in a public service, which is cuts, cuts, cuts. We can do the very best we can. We do teach great team skills. I interview everybody. We don't take anybody who is not going to be a team member. We teach as much as we can up to broadcast standard, but we haven't got all the kit. They do come to studio shows. They do get out. They do masses of work experience. But actually, at the end of the day, they will be freelance on short-term contracts. Their training will never keep up. And there's no real training. And I think what you said, Chris, there's a lot of sense in what ITV does. I'm an old ITV person, but that there's still not enough. So that's really my major point. What's the broadcast industry going to do more for
Chris?
us?
I'd agree quantity is an issue. At the end of the day, every company is a business. We also want them to be real jobs, not token jobs for 3 or 6 months, just to satisfy statistics at the end of a course. You're right. And even a broadcaster as large as ITV, everybody has to sort of pay their way and their contribution. I would rather fewer real, effective, long-term, invested jobs than just sort of taking 20% of everything Ravensbourne has available, as a for instance, because geographically they're very close to us. But yes, I would agree. We're dealing with huge numbers at the end of every academic year. So that has to be addressed as well, I think.
Anyone else?
I think that, well, just going on your point about, you know, obviously you've got cuts, but I think it's the same for, you know, the private companies as well. You know, more and more production companies are wanting more and more for less money, and I think, you know, we feel that the cuts just as much as anybody. We as I say, we've got 9 trainees that we're getting at the moment, which is it's more than 10% of our workforce. But as I say, it's expensive. You know, we can't send these people out as engineers. We don't get any money back from the clients for them. So as I say, we're doing that at our costs. And as I say, you can only do it at a limited number because, as I say, once again, we're getting pushed to sort of reduce costs as well.
Next one. Sorry, there's a gentleman here near the front.
Thank you, Brian Rose, Guild of Television Cameramen. I'm the welfare officer. Is to mentor young people coming into the camera department who we've already heard have absolutely no training, education or mentoring even on how to get a job, let alone, and probably more important, how to maintain that job because of attitudes to work. You say, I'm a graduate, I know it all, and then they find they know nothing. To our colleagues in the education, perhaps we are getting a little bit too academic, and we do need to go back to the times of vocational training when that actually was respected, and that vocational training was very specifically aimed at jobs rather than a BA or a BSc after spending £9,000 a year for 3 years, which I think one politician said that's almost £18,000. I actually went to college many years ago to do a course in photoscience and scientific photography, and I was able to actually leave college and get a job straight away at National Physics Laboratories doing exactly what I had been taught, because the people who set the course were the people who, they were actually the employers. They were the people who actually needed those specific skills. So perhaps, and this is more of a political thing perhaps, that we need more funding for vocational courses than for academic courses.
Lady there, just there. Sorry, lady there, you've got your hand up. Oh, gentlemen, sorry, it's terrible, this light. I'm so sorry. It's hopeless, isn't it? I can't see anything. I'm so sorry. No wonder everyone was looking a bit confused.
I'm a little bit concerned about what I'm going to say now.
Yes, gentleman there.
My name's John Barlow. I was once head of cameras at the BBC and then ran the BBC film department. Gone are the days when we looked at our budgets and said that 1.5% of our turnover was going to be put into training. We're in a period of austerity at the moment, and no organisation can afford to put that kind of level of funding into taking very junior staff and bringing them on up to the more professional standards. I think there's a couple of dangers being highlighted already. First of all, that we seem to be talking mainly about the technical operations roles as opposed to all of television production. There's quite a dearth of skill when it comes to directing, producing, costume, makeup, etc. And that must not be overlooked as we work our way through today. The other issue that I've noted already is that we're in danger of the industry blaming education, and education saying that it just doesn't have the funds. The fact is that companies are not going to have the funds to be able to train in the way that people were trained previously. If I can pick on Peter Leverick. Peter, how many years before you became a qualified cameraman? I'll guess 6.
Near enough. Yeah.
An incredible investment in time to generate a professional. It's not available. The OB chap, you want to bring people in who already know what they're doing. So they need the training, they need the experience. The only time that realistically is going to be available to do this training is in the universities, the colleges, the courses that are being run. Now, how do you square this circle? Because you're blaming each other. I don't know anything about Skillset, but I'm told, Ros, you said somebody from Skillset was going to be here. Now, if I've got this right, in order for a university to get accreditation for its course, it has to justify organisations like Skillset that the curriculum is appropriate. Well, it isn't. No. These professionals are telling us that what's coming out of the colleges and the universities isn't appropriate. So, who is overlooking what the skill sets, and are there others? I don't know, I'm not in education, but who is actually looking at what they are certifying as being acceptable? Because they're getting it wrong. And I think the message from the top table there is that it's people currently in the industry that can shape what the universities should be producing. So it's the people in the industry that ought to be saying to Skillset, this is what we want, make sure that you only give accreditation to the colleges, universities that are going to produce that for us. You've only got these 3 years, I suggest it might even reduce to 2, so that education at that time has got to be used far more effectively than it has. The days of years of apprenticeship are gone. We need to produce people who can step into the professional world with at least a walking pace. Not necessarily running, but at least have the beginnings of being able to work with all the things that you've been saying they need to do. Sorry, I'm going on a bit, but women do.
Was there a question? Not exactly a question. Did anyone want to respond?
I'm just really endorsing everything that's been said. I mean, the core of it, I agree. Is what my last comment is. It's expensive, but that investment will keep the industry going to this sort of level. But I appreciate not everybody can do all of these things, but it's not cheap.
I just wanted to say that I know this conference is about training and new people coming into it. There's no ongoing training for anybody in the industry, where be it people already employed by companies, whether they're freelance. It's a lot of the concern is that new people, but if you don't keep the people in the industry up to date with what new kit, new processes are, you can't carry on because there's nobody to train the new people coming into it. And from what I see quite often, there's new people being trained by people with no experience in the industry already. They've only been doing the job 2 years themselves and they're training more new people. So that skill set is just disappearing because they haven't got the experience to be teaching new people coming into the industry.
One thing we haven't mentioned, of course, is the third element, which is the manufacturers and their courses. I mean, Avid do a lot of courses, don't they? And so do other people.
So I mean, going back to the freelance issue, for an example, an OB company will build a new OB truck. They will put into it various new pieces of kit. The manufacturers will put on courses to show their staff people, but very often the freelance people are not invited to look after that kit because they're not expected to use it. 6 months down the road, when the OB company don't have enough staff, they want 3 freelancers to go in and look after that truck. None of them have seen the truck. They may get a day on it in base, but that's as far as it goes. And that isn't sufficient to understand the complexities of one of the modern OB trucks.
So finally, do any of you feel the manufacturers need to do more?
I think so. I think they have obviously invested a lot of money in producing this new piece of kit, whatever it be. And as Mike said, yes, they may come round to OB companies, but if I'm quite sure if they started doing some seminars with freelance people and things like that, it would make a big difference.
I think the performance of the manufacturers is uneven. We get a lot of support. Some people like Sony have absolutely excellent training facilities. But again, I'm not all about money, but it is expensive at that point. Then in the sound world, Calorec are extremely good, and not the sort of costs for courses that you need. So again, it's a change of attitude with some of the manufacturers just to get all this training available to everybody, I think.
And do you think the manufacturers should be working more with the universities then?
I think,
bringing the 3 elements together, the industry, the universities and the manufacturers.
To sponsor the universities and the training establishments with proper equipment.
I mean, I think there is investment already. I mean, Sony have installed the HD studio in Bournemouth. I don't know where that support has continued to, what level that's continued to, but that is the sort of thing, if a manufacturer wants their products seen by the next generation, that's a very, very important relationship.
We've got time for like 1 or possibly 2 more questions. Anybody else put their hand up?
Lady to my left.
Right. Lady. Sorry?
There's a lady at the back here who
Right.
would like to say something, but nobody can see her hand.
Ah, I can't see. Well, we'll take the 2 of you then. Right, okay. First of all, we'll do the lady at the back and then come to the lady nearer the front.
Thank you very much to the gentleman behind me. I've no idea who he is, but I'm grateful he's there. Yeah, my name is Claire Paul. I look after entry-level talent at the BBC Academy. And I just wanted to pick up on one particular point that's been said here about employer involvement, because certainly at the entry-level talent end of things, it's not, we can't solve everything, but there is a lot going on across the industry. Particularly around the kind of apprenticeship and the traineeship agenda, which perhaps not everyone's aware of. For instance, we were talking about employers getting more involved in the content. Well, if I look across the industry at the moment, launched this year was a new apprenticeship for technology for broadcast engineers, where the industry, the BBC's hosted and brought this together, but ITV, Archiver, Red Bee, Channel 4, all through the auspices of Skillset have come together to look at what our industry needs over the next 5 years because of the horrible age gap we've got in technology, brought those people together, got the money together, and actually have launched a program which will train up to 200 people over the next 5 years. So that's one example where I think it's working. Another example in production management where we have a very big skills gap. Again, bringing the industry together, heads of production at ITV, the big indies, the BBC, sitting down together, and what we are doing is designing the qualification. So the head of production at ITV, the heads of production at the BBC, Endemol, other indies, coming together and saying, this is what we need for our industry. We're working with Skillset to develop apprenticeships which will deliver that employer agenda. Now, none of this is perfect, and there's a huge areas of things that we have to solve, but there are things going on which are really exciting, I think, with the broadcast industry coming together. And you'll hear, I think, Matt Hancock later talking a lot more about this employer-led agenda. And to be fair, I think, to Skillset, they've come in for a bit of stick this morning, but they are working very, very hard to bring employers together. They've been incredibly helpful in helping us actually physically design qualifications. So I think maybe a little bit more knowledge about the kind of real breadth of things that people are doing, notwithstanding actually that that's not necessarily solving all the problems.
Okay, can I take one other question? This will be the final question. Hand up. No, here. No, here we are. No?
Right. Shall I start? My name's Stephen Partridge. I'm head of media production at Buckinghamshire New University. And I'm between blood is boiling and quite optimistic, actually. I think there have been several wild assumptions made by people in industry. I think a lot of you are looking in the wrong place when you're looking at perhaps some practice which is going to help. And I think we're not being very creative or imaginative in how we solve what is obviously a significant problem. So just a couple of specifics concerning how I've tried to evolve the constraints of higher education over the last 6 or 7 years. For CITV, I've got an outside broadcast unit which I've developed with help from some people in the room looking around the audience, and we shoot a couple of productions per week. We shoot championship football, most of Watford's home games on a Saturday. We shoot bands, we do some theatre performance and some dance. Students do this for a couple of years, and by the time they graduate, they are work ready. I had 5 graduates last year that were employed by Sky before they graduated as camera operators, editors, going from Soccer Saturday through to Formula One and that kind of thing. There are some things which are going very well. I suspect that you need to look a little bit harder. Okay, as a new university, it's very hard to make this work, but there are some fairly obvious ways that it can happen. I keep about 1/3 of my staff in budget for industry-based professionals. So as I speak currently, I've got Lorna Dean Gibbs in, who some of you may know. She works for the Premier League. She's been in broadcast a long time, and she's the kind of calibre of person that's teaching students about how to prepare productions for sport. Neil Garner from BBC Training comes in and helps, and I could reel off a whole host of names. Gavin Scovell does masterclasses in directing football and cricket. There are lots of very good people that do come in, give their time as associate and guest lecturers to try and make this work properly. What I need, my job, is to listen to industry to inform the curriculum with the help of my colleagues. Okay, that's what I do full time, and it's a passion, and it works. It can work, but it does need for you to invest your time. On EVS, you're talking about manufacturers need to do more. Okay.
Do you find that your students get jobs?
Yes, they do. They're doing very well, and I can provide lots of evidence of that if you want it today. And a whole range of jobs as well. EVS is a really good example of a manufacturer that does support industry.
That to be the last point.
One has to go out and find the manufacturers. Mike Snell at EVS has helped put EVS systems in the truck that I couldn't afford. And Gareth Carr, who's a permanent employee at Sky as an EVS operator, on his days off, he comes in and trains my students. So they have two years of EVS training. There are a lot of things that go right. The point I want to make is this, though. There are ways of making this work a lot better if we can get manufacturers and broadcast professionals feeding curriculum design and curriculum development. That's one thing. 3 years can work. The model is, though, I hear from some colleagues at BBC Training, from BBC Training, such as Neil Garner, who's been based at Wood Norton for a long time, about the demise, about the kind of, the wind down of finance that goes towards training professionals of tomorrow. Bemoaning the fact that things are have diminished so quickly and so thoroughly. And we're talking a lot about cost. Well, who's going to pay for this? The model has got to be different, and it can be different. If we've got undergraduates, and hopefully this doesn't sound too cynical, we've got undergraduates paying £9,000 a year to go to university, and they're paying for their own training in a way, if the training is right. I hope you see where I'm going here. If we have got a through flow of information from industry-based professionals, from manufacturers, all the right sorts of things going into the curriculum, and that curriculum being flexible enough to change on an ongoing basis, rather than when I started in higher education, I was told initially, you can't change the curriculum, that happens every 6 years. Now it happens every 6 months. If the information goes in right, then the money, actually the cost of training comes from the undergraduates that are paying for it.
I'll have to stop you there because
work.
we're running out of time, but thank you very much. Very valuable point. And one final person.
Hi, I'm Jackson Jessup, Head of Technical Resources at the London College of Communication, part of the University of the Arts London. I have a terrible problem with the new equipment. Students know what's out there. They really want to get their hands on the newest bits and pieces. We're piloting something this year for our graduation films where I'm giving them money to go to a hire firm. So they have an industry contact. They go there, they test the cameras, they work with the hire firm. What do you think? Is there an emphasis on the process or the technology? It's a real problem for me at the moment. I've got 3 camera setup studio as well as hundreds of cameras that they take out. Where's the emphasis? Do you want the students to know the newest bits and pieces, or do you really want them to know the processes involved?
I think as part of a major broadcaster, it's the processes as much as anything, because every centre's equipment will be 3/4 what you see elsewhere. But also, if we are going down the camera route, don't dismiss what the Guild of Television Cameramen does as an organisation in offering free training to any members. Student membership is cheaper as well than full membership, but they offer extensive courses alongside professionals that will also show you how that kit is implemented into the bigger companies. And yes, at the London Studios ITV, we also offer facilities for students to come in and look at the kit that they may be using in the future. But again, I hark back, it's a big organisation, it's big facilities, and I understand not everyone can do that. But there are routes already, but I think if you're a little bit more homework, as I say, what the GTC does and what some of the big manufacturers can do will really help.
Okay, thanks very much, and thank you very much. Thanks very much to our panel. So we'll go to a tea break, and we'll come back in half an hour, and please be back at 11:15. And I hope you've enjoyed it so far. Want to come back.